So welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us here. I can see a few people streaming in now, which is great. Excited to be talking to everybody about the topic of the day, navigating the road to success and how you can build winning roadmaps with Userback and user feedback. We've got a few people trickling in, so we'll give it 30 seconds. We want to start on time as best we can here so that we can all get away within the 30 minutes that we promised. I can see a few trickling through. I think we've probably got enough already, Dan, that we can get started here. So again, thanks everybody for joining us. We're going to talk about navigating the road to success and building winning roadmaps. Today, we're going to be recording the session and we'll be sharing the slides and that recording with everybody via email shortly after the conclusion of the webinar. So it's always one of the first questions we get in the Q&A. Will the slides be shared? Will there be a recording? The answer is yes today, so no problem with anything on that. On the topic of Q&A, if you have any questions, drop them into the chat and we're going to endeavour to answer every single one of those at the back end of this webinar. Hopefully we'll answer a bunch of them as we go along. If something pops up, feel free to drop it in as soon as that idea springs to mind and we'll get to them at the end. So with that being said, I'd like to welcome everybody again to today's webinar. My name is Matthew Kier. I'm the Marketing Director here at Userback, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Daniel Rae. Daniel is a Customer Success Manager here at Userback, has been with the company for a number of years as an expert at connecting the value between user commentary and feedback with the Userback tool and the business outcomes that web agencies, web owners, and SaaS organizations are looking for to power their organizational growth. So Dan, super excited to have you here, super excited to talk road mapping. I'm going to turn it over to your expertise here and you can take it away.
Perfect. What a stellar introduction. Thank you, Matthew. And I look forward to sharing a bit of knowledge, especially based on my experience, based on some of the organizations I've worked at, including Userback, where I've had a bit of experience around how our customers leverage our tools, some of the success they've had, and what you can do and how to implement some of their successes. So I think I'll start by, as you say, Matthew, framing that pain. So I wanted to talk about some of the challenges of idea management in general, and then obviously we'll talk that through into the feature portal or the feedback portal with Userback and how to close that loop. So the first component that I've really identified as part of a challenge with idea management is just those scattered ideas. There's so many ways that ideas can come in based on my experience. The first way is email. Getting those in email. Nobody has access to your emails but you. It's up to you whether you forward that information. And that second way I can think of is by phone. And it really depends where you're sharing that information. So that first way, it's got coming in by email. The second one is coming in through phone calls, and potentially you've set up a form somewhere where that's potentially populating a spreadsheet somewhere. So those ideas being scattered really helps no one. It means that it's just leading to a bit of disorganization, really wasting time, wasting resources. There's really no need for it. That second challenge that I've identified, or that we've all identified, is that lack of collaboration. So not only are your ideas scattered, but it's difficult to loop in other team members. If those feature requests or those ideas are sitting in your email, there's no way that someone will have access to it unless you're proactively sharing it with someone. So it doesn't foster good teamwork. It doesn't foster innovation to have those ideas scattered and to not have a centralized place for those ideas. That last component, prioritization of issues. So really ensuring that those ideas that are coming in, making sure that you can prioritize them effectively. So the biggest challenge here is that you don't know what to build because your ideas are scattered. You don't have everyone involved. You don't have that input. So again, wasted resources and missed opportunities. So in terms of idea management, those are some of the challenges that we've experienced. So let's take a look at what those traditional methods are of idea collection versus Userback's idea collection and management. So some of the original ways of doing things, like bringing things in over email or by form or by phone call, where you're just entering them in your CRM, it's going to streamline that communication. So it's moving from those emails, moving from those spreadsheets into a single source of truth. So that's that first core benefit that we're looking at using a tool like Userback. The second is that light speed validation. So with Userback, we're getting that really high context, really low effort from the users. We can identify who users are before they've submitted their feedback inside your application. So they are just submitting a basic idea, but we're immediately identifying who they are, what they mean to the business, the value to your business, to ensure that if you need to validate the idea and understand whether it needs to be built, you can leverage, of course, the idea itself, who's reporting it, and the value to your business to ensure that that's handled correctly. And that last, traditional versus Userback benefit, static boxes to a real-time loop. So ensuring that feedback loop is real-time, and that's what you're going to get out of Userback by ensuring that feedback comes in through Userback, and you can, of course, reply through Userback as well. So we've got that single source of truth, single source of communication, and your whole team is across it. That's really that core benefit of Userback that I've come to expect.
I think they're fair points, Dan, if I can jump in there just for a moment, talking about the traditional methods and how slow, and disconnected those methodologies are and those different tools. We speak to a lot of people talk about the internal speed that they can move with across these teams. Either their clients want more, faster, and probably for less, in truth, right? And SaaS teams, Absolutely. They're always iterating on that product. And it's not just a case, these days of big fish eat small fish. It's very much fast fish eats slow fish, right? And that iterative process, I think, is something that's really important through both of those business models, right, which we're seeing there. And the validation piece that you touched on there, it's not just about quality of submitter either, right? It can be about the quantity of ideas, right? So being able to collect and consolidate the same idea over and over, it may not be that it's your highest paying customer, although that's a great place to start, right? If they're giving you enough money, you'll build anything. But
Absolutely,
in most cases, you have a distributed customer base, and so being able to connect the dots between ideas of similar ilk, is super important. And being able to do that when it's email, phone call, spreadsheet, CRM, is nearly impossible for these teams. So a really stark contrast that we're talking about today.
I think you summarized that perfectly. Again, that single source of truth, validating them quickly, and ensuring that's a really quick, real-time feedback loop. So again, I believe you've covered that off perfectly. So I want to show you what that looks like inside Userback itself. So what we're going to do is we're going to start from our demo app page. This is here to represent your standard web app that you might be building. Again, Userback works in websites or web apps, and essentially you'll have this feedback button, which is completely customizable, but provides a really quick way for your users to provide feedback to you. Doesn't matter if they're internal or external users, like your customers or your team and colleagues. So reporting feedback is super simple. When you click on it, it's going to give you the option to provide 3 different types of feedback. Again, completely customizable. You can just have an idea form or just a bug form. Because we're talking about prioritizing and centralizing feature requests with user feedback, we're going to look at the share an idea part. The first thing you'll notice is that it's actually pre-filled in my email. So this is going to be the first benefit of Userback that I'm going to share, is that low friction from the user. We already know who the person is within your app. Why not output their details, save them the time, and ensure that all of their effort is dedicated to sharing the context around the idea that they are sharing? So we've got 2 default fields that we're providing. Number 1, the idea. Here's my idea, and obviously I want you guys to be a bit more descriptive or encourage a bit more description as your users are sharing ideas. But again, this is just a demonstration for today. So here's context around my idea. And you're also given the option, or your users are given the option, to either take a screenshot and annotate that on the screen if that context helps convey the idea, or record a video if that makes sense. Well, my idea here is relevant to the page, but I don't think sharing a screenshot is going to help. So I'm just going to click send feedback. So I've just added a title and I've added the description. Super easy stuff. what we're going to do now is we're going to jump into Userback to see what that looks like, okay? So we'll click demo page, the feedback page inside Userback, okay? And cool, so I've just opened up Userback and I can see the most recent feedback to come in is from me. It's got the title, here's my idea, you saw me type that in, and you've got the description, here's the context around my idea. So one major benefit of Userback is that high context, low effort piece. We are taking a lot of information in the background, which means less effort for those users, more context to prioritize and categorize from your end. So off to the right-hand side, you'll see immediately that a screenshot was shared. It's up to you, but you can actually take screenshots whether your users take those screenshots or not. Obviously consider their privacy and other factors, but just know that you can add additional context without asking that user directly to take action. So we're going to look at that screenshot and see if it has relevance to the idea. It looks like it does, fantastic. We'll then go along and ensure that all of the details and context is filled in for anything that I can populate. So we've got our status field here. It's a new feedback. The assignee is currently me, and the priority is neutral. The only change I'm going to make here today is the category. I'm going to say that it's related to the dashboard. This feature is related to the dashboard. The final thing I'm going to do is just check over the user's information, okay? So I can see that it's Daniel Rae at Userback, and obviously I understand a bit of context around that user, so I can prioritize effectively. The other thing I can do is look at a bit of context from when that user submitted the feedback. Are there any issues that occurred whilst that person was submitting feedback? Is the idea an actual idea? So that's what Userback's going to give you. It's going to make it really low effort for your users, and it's going to give you that high level of context, whether it's related to the idea or not. The next thing I'm going to show you,
much faster, Dan, to clean out the garbage, right? Anytime you open up your tooling to feedback, I think there's a fear that people are going to be swamped with garbage, and historically that's been really hard to manage.
That's a really good point.
So what you're talking about here, just the hygiene around your feedback and your ideas is vastly simplified with this method.
Absolutely nailed it. The validation piece as well, but anyone with any experience listening to this right now completely understands, and I'll use that word, the garbage that comes through. Is it actually an idea? Is it actually a bug? And this is your opportunity to fully vet and understand before it reaches those team members that would take action. Right. So again, a level of validation and a level of cleaning. Absolutely. The next thing I want to show you is closing out that feedback loop. So ensuring that this idea is publicly shared so that your community understands what ideas are important. The person that's shared the idea understands what you're doing with that information. And again, we're validating that by populating that in our feedback portal because that makes the most sense at this point. So I'm going to show you that. What I'll do is when new feedback comes in, immediately, we don't show it in the feedback portal as a level of moderation. So once you've vetted the idea, you can come across and say, yes, I want that visible in my feedback portal. And let's take a look at what that looks like in a new window here. So when new feedback or new feature requests come in, you have the option to add it to a feedback or feature portal. This is your way of closing out the feedback loop by sharing all of the ideas that you're hoping to validate. You're hoping to understand different use cases. And here's what that looks like. So this idea was taken from within the app. You've met them at that moment of feedback. You've got that context. And then this is now publicly shared on the feedback portal, which is a public link. At this point, your users can come in. They can vote on the idea by saying what's important to them. You'll be able to view these voters and again, further prioritize and categorize based on who is voting for this idea. You can also ask your users to leave comments or expand on the ideas that they have. One of the key benefits of expanding or asking your users to expand is not just for you to have this conversation and to show that you're listening, but is also to ensure that when that feature is built, that you hit the mark. Don't always assume that you understand what the user's talking about. dive deeper and understand what they're asking for to ensure, again, that you hit that mark as soon as it's built.
Spending a moment on scoping and understanding the problem at hand. At this point, so much cheaper than trying to fix things post-release, right? Once they're in the wilderness, the cost is exponential in trying to make changes, right? Jotting it down on paper is cheap, but changing code becomes expensive. So I think that's a really good point there that you touch on.
Couldn't agree more, Matt. Absolutely. So the last piece of the feedback portal that I'll show you, actually, there's two key points that I want to show you. Aside from the categorization options on the left-hand side, we actually have the ability to add new ideas at this point. So there's actually two ways that your users can add feedback. So the first way was in your app with the widget I've just shown you. The second is for them to actually access the feature portal. They can review the ideas that are already here, and they can actually start to type in their idea and potentially surface ideas that already exist. So again, talking about that cleaning, making sure that there's no duplicates. This is a good way to do that. Send your users to the feature portal. As they start to type in their idea, it's going to pre-populate, and perhaps this is a better way for them to provide their idea in context. If the idea doesn't exist already, they can obviously share that information here, share a screenshot, then that goes over to you for moderation. Then you can take action with whatever the next step of your process or workflow is. That last piece, roadmap. So one thing that you can do is as you start to get features in, as you start to build and progress your features, you might want to share the progress of your roadmap. So here's an idea. Here's an idea of what that looks like. Keep in mind that this is just a demonstration. As ideas come in, you can absolutely progress them through different statuses, which are then reflected on the public roadmap, all the way to when they're shipped, where you can then close out that feedback loop and tell them the idea is built. So again, we're not just taking ideas, we're not just storing them in a centralized location, but we're including our community in the loop from when it's open, from when they're starting to be developed, all the way to when it's shipped. Aside from including the community, it's also going to show new sales and potential trialers the activity of your platform and your contributions as well. So it's going to show that you're an active developing product, that you're not stagnating, and that your community is actively listened to, which is a benefit that I really find by leveraging the feedback portal with Userback.
One question here without notice for you, Dan, when we were just talking earlier about making sure that the quality of incoming feedback is of a high standard, and you've shown how you can submit new ideas here. Maybe you could talk just for a second about how Userback can help with the duplicate ideas. I think that's something that, is a common pain point where we're seeing a lot of the same stuff that we have to wade through. I think that's an important piece to touch on when we're talking about the manageability of this sort of stuff.
I agree. It's actually a question I get almost every single time I jump into a demonstration of Userback. Anybody that shows half an interest in collecting ideas or automatically starts talking about conflicts because it's a problem I believe we've all faced. Even if we're using emails or spreadsheets, it's something that I know you're all coming up against. I think the first way that you would generally do it is by just asking your users to review the feedback portal before they submit it. The other way that you can do it is by a product manager jumping into Userback and looking at the ideas as they come in. If you do notice any similar ideas, you can absolutely leverage Userback's merging function. So if I see two ideas that are essentially the same, I can merge them, select a primary feedback, perhaps the original idea or the one that has the most feedback. I'll then click merge. The votes are consolidated, and then you can jump in here, manage the master feedback and also the child feedback as well. So again, if we wanted to consolidate duplicate feedback or duplicate ideas that follow similar outcomes, we can put them together, and then I can go to the original feedback and share a comment to that person to let them know their idea was already in the system and that their context and their input has been added to the main idea, and to obviously thank them. So A good way to keep this all clean is by merging them together and obviously asking your users to take a look at what already exists, and also pre-populating those fields as they type in their ideas.
Yeah, I think the suggested ideas or the pre-population of ideas as they start to suggest their idea, demonstrating that it's there with others where they can, as you say, sort of share a heart, a like, and upvote, or add commentary to that single point around an idea, can really stream that so that there's not an overwhelming amount of manual, deduplication and things that is a real headache for people, right?
Absolutely. So let's jump back and just summarize some of the key takeaways that we've looked at today. Again, as Matt mentioned earlier, there will be an opportunity to share your questions. I just want to do a bit of a recap on what we've talked about, or rather the takeaways that we've established today. So one of the key benefits of leveraging Userback is having that user-centric approach, actively involving your users in the feedback process, providing a sense of community and ownership. So this is leveraging the Userback Feedback Portal. Again, leveraging that feedback portal and that high context piece by using Userback to collect ideas is going to enable you to create data-driven decisions or make data-driven decisions. If we're pre-populating information about the user, we can immediately understand how to action it, how to leverage that data, and to make more informed and impactful choices. That last one is going to be agile execution. Like speed, as we saw earlier, Userback is absolutely built for speed. It's going to enable you to collect feedback really quickly in that moment of feedback when your users have it, and it's going to enable you to foster that sense of community by leveraging the feedback portal, and allow you to pivot quickly by understanding their comments and their communication, so you know what to implement at the right times. So aside from having that centralized source of truth that I was talking about earlier, we've also got that user-centric approach, ensuring that we make decisions based on data and make sure those decisions are made really, really quickly. So just jumping on to that Q&A that we talked about earlier, Matt, I might let you drive this one.
Can do. So thanks for taking us through that review there, Dan, of the way things have historically been done, and an opportunity for people to examine a new way to do these things. So I think it's always worth considering new ideas. I guess that's the whole point of what we're talking about here, collecting new ideas, but there's also just the approach in general is a new idea. So wheels within wheels. We've got a couple of questions as I stall away there. So there's a couple that have trickled in, which is good. So let's open that up. The first question here is we're talking about populating roadmaps and road mapping there. What's the relationship with existing roadmap tools? Can this replace a tool like Product Board?
Really good question. It's completely up to you if your road mapping tool is fit for purpose. Userback can absolutely be leveraged as a single source of truth and a way to manage your roadmap. So the first thing that I'd recommend is, if it makes sense, use Userback as your single source of truth for feedback and road mapping. But of course, it can be used in addition to a tool like Product Board, because ultimately we do really well on the high context collection piece, and it's still possible to leverage that high context piece in a tool like Product Board. So it's up to you whether you use it in replace of, or in addition, or accompanying something like Product Board.
I think that's fair. Depending on your use case, we can be seen as a competitive or as a complementary technology to those tools that are out there today. If you're already deep with a tool like, we're just using Product Board as an example here because it's come through as a question. It doesn't say Product Board specifically, it said a tool like a Product Board. So we'll apply this to everything, but
of course,
Userback can be used to validate that idea before you move the idea into the Product Board or into the roadmap tool, to allow your teams to then manage that through. So if you love the tool you've got but want to validate those ideas first, we can certainly help. And if you don't have a tool, Userback can be the one-stop shop for this. I think that's a great way you've answered it, Dan. We touched on a little bit of this earlier on. So somebody is feeling the pain that we talked about here. If I track the feedback today they're using Google Sheets and their CRM. Is there a simple way to consolidate it into Userback? So do they have to start afresh and add a third pillar into that, or can they consolidate this all into Userback some easy way?
Good question. Simple answer: import by CSV. Userback's got an importing function, regardless of where those feedback reside. If you have the ability to export them, you can bring them into Userback. So I won't go much deeper than that. I will mention very quickly that we have a REST API where you can send this information from really any external tool for those technical and enterprise teams out there. But I think for most people, understanding that there's an import function, making Userback your centralized source of truth. Again, it's probably the 10th time I've said that word combination. It's really simple, very simple indeed.
Yep, fast and easy is the way to go, I think, for most teams, regardless if they're big or small.
That's it.
Can I have different departments involved in the Userback roadmap view?
Another great question. I think the best way to approach this would be really understanding how your teams operate. For example, we have myself inside Userback. I also have my customer team manager, and I also have my development or CTO development lead. So the way that we incorporate different teams is by adding members of those teams into Userback and leveraging the assignees that are there, or rather assigning the feedback to them at different points of the workflow. So if it makes sense, add those team members in, and when it comes time, assign those feedback to those people and ensure that that workflow is then handled there. But honestly, it's really up to you. We're not here to dictate how you should manage your workflow, but really support it and flex around it as much as possible.
Yep. I think that's a good answer, because it half answers my next question that I've got in here, Dan, which is the last one that we've got. So if you've got any questions, please drop them in there while we're going through these. But the final question that I've got in here is, can I have different integrations for different feedback types? They've got, excuse me, they have, can I send bugs to my Jira and features to my Asana?
Very specific question with a very specific answer. Yes, you absolutely can. You can even go as far as sending a third feedback type to a whole separate place. So just as a clarification, you can send bug reports automatically to Jira. And if needed, you can send a feedback to Asana manually or automatically. So it's up to you how the triaging occurs, whether it's automatic or manual. But the important part to understand is that you can send off different feedback to different integrations in the same project, depending on where your team, wherever they work.
Yeah, as you say, it's a specific question. That might be a Userback user that's exploring the additional features that we've got in there.
That makes sense.
So that could be it.
That's it. I might reach out to that person straight after this to offer some insight. But really good questions, guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah, fantastic. We'll give it 30 seconds more to see if there's anybody else with a question that's popped up. I would say that if you're like me, 5 minutes after this ends, you'll think of a great question to ask. Don't feel like you've missed your opportunity. You can always shoot us an email on this topic or anything else at letstalk@userback.io, and we'll be able to field any of those. Dan and myself can monitor that and see how we can help answer any questions that might come up related or unrelated to this. Okay, I can't see anything else come through at this point. So I think in the interest of time, Dan, we might wrap it up here.
Perfect.
Thank you for taking us through it. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Keep an eye on the inbox, because we'll be sharing this recording along with a link to Userback's own roadmap. So if you want to explore how we're walking the talk, you'll be able to see that in the email as well and see how that we use the function ourselves. So with that being said, thanks again, and here's to building successful roadmaps. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Matt.
Bye-bye.